welcome to Verbal to Visual Video. I'm your host, Doug Neill, and today I'm going to describe something called the Clothesline Method, which is a visual metaphor that can be used to help you organize your ideas. I heard about this method thanks to Stephen Pressfield's email newsletter. He has a series called Writing Wednesdays, where he delves into the topic of being an author and what it takes to write a book. If that name sounds familiar, there are a couple of reasons why that might be the case. I mentioned Pressfield back in episode 4 when I was looking back at 2014. His book, The War of Art, had a pretty big impact on my year. I called 2014 the year of conquering resistance because of that book. Pressfield is also the author of The Legend of Bagger Vance, in addition to a number of other novels, so you might have heard of him for those reasons as well. What I'm going to do in this video is first share how Pressfield uses this visual metaphor in the early stages of writing a novel. Then I'm going to share how I am using this visual metaphor for an upcoming project that I'm working on. Finally, at the end of this video, I'll be asking you how you might be able to apply this to something that you are working on. Let's start then with Pressfield, who hangs scenes and sequences from his novel on this clothesline. What's useful about this method is that you can start anywhere, even if you only know the opening scene and the final scene of your book. That's a perfectly reasonable place to start, because once you have those on this clothesline, you can start filling in the gaps. Based on the starting point and the end point, you probably know at least a few of the things that need to happen in between to make that transition occur. And then once you have a few of those intermediate scenes and events, it's just a matter of continuing to fill in the gaps as you go. Here's a quote from Pressfield. "What I love about this method is it's simple and it's dumb. It takes all the preciousness out of the process. And it eliminates a lot of the fear. How hard is it to hang a dozen dresses, sheets, and pairs of blue jeans on a line?" This method resonates with me for a very similar reason. My primary tools these days are note cards and yellow legal pads. I use those two materials for all of the initial brainstorming and planning of any project that I'm working on. But I haven't always used these cheap and accessible materials. What I used to use were expensive moleskin notebooks. Now, there is a time and a place to break out high quality materials, but it's not when you're iterating on ideas. What I found when I used those kind of fancy hardcover, thick page notebooks is that I was constantly running the risk of letting that preciousness that Pressfield described work its way into my note-taking process, which can only be destructive. Because of the material I was using, I was worrying too much about the aesthetics of the ideas that I was getting down, when what I should have been worrying about was iterating on those ideas and focusing on how those notes that I was taking was going to help me achieve whatever project I was working on. The notes themselves aren't the project. The outcome is not the ideas on the page. The outcome is what you do with those ideas. So I will be using my cheap tools with this clothesline method as a tool to help me plan out the verbal to visual classroom, which I announced at the end of last week's video. I'm building a digital learning environment that has a very specific goal, and that goal is to help you develop a note-taking system that works for your circumstances and helps you move toward your goals. That classroom consists of modules that you will work through sequentially as you build your skills and figure out how to take all of these options in the world of visual note-taking and apply them appropriately to your work. So I feel like I'm in a similar place as Pressfield when he's starting work on a new novel. I know what I want the end point of this classroom to be. I know what I want you to leave this learning experience with. And I know a lot of the pieces that come before that. And now what I want to do is make sure that the sequencing of those pieces makes the most sense, and I'm not neglecting or being blind to any gaps in the learning experience that would cause hiccups for you if you decide to sign up and take a look and work through these modules. So I already have a wall space in my home office dedicated to the clothesline that will represent the verbal to visual classroom. And before I get down to the nitty-gritty technical work of actually building that website out, I'm going to make sure that clothesline, that the ideas on that clothesline are in a really good place and that I'm not missing anything important. So Pressfield uses this method in the early stages of writing a novel, and I'm using it in the early stages of curriculum development for the verbal to visual classroom. How might you use this method? If you've got a project that involves the sequencing of ideas or experiences in time, then grab some loose sheets of paper, the cheaper the better, and give this method a try. Maybe you'll even want to join me in picking up some string and clothespins and throwing up that line somewhere in your workspace so that you can attach ideas as they come, move them around as necessary, and fill in those gaps until you have the confidence to move forward with your project and the perspective to do the nitty-gritty work without losing the big picture. Use that clothesline to then do the work. That's the next step that too often we lose sight of. If you like this video, you will probably like my email newsletter. It's no Writing Wednesdays, but it will keep you up to date with everything going on in the world of visual thinking. To sign up, head on over to verbaltovisual.com. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and go hang some clothes. Until next time.